Good afternoon. For today's episode, we're going to have kind of a joint episode here. We're going to combine a few stories of surveillance gone right and a few legal updates and why, no, not so much updates, some legal information as to why private investigators can't do everything you might see one do on TV. First, some stories of surveillance gone right. Surveillance can go right for a number of reasons, but they always rely upon your subject, claimant, however you refer to the individual in question that you're watching, and that individual's actions. We have, in my experience as a PI in association with various companies and having various investigators work under my company umbrella, collectively obtained footage of subjects and insurance claimants hoisting full-grown human beings over their shoulders, picking up washers and dryers and hauling them off for random salvage, going to concerts, drinking in front of numerous children, including their own child, out in public on the driveway, drinking and driving with the child, claiming an injury to their back while dancing a jig at a redneck event. Literally a redneck event. It was called Rednecks with Paychecks. Going out of town to meet up with a girlfriend and then staying at not only staying in a high-rise hotel in Dallas and making it easy to be spotted, but opening the blinds of the windows of their room in the middle of the night while keeping all the lights on in the room. And yes, it is legal to film. And that's going to be our transition into what we can and cannot do legally. So a private investigator cannot, under any circumstances, circumvent an individual's reasonable expectation of privacy. So when you have a window and you have your blinds down, even though, as kids, maybe we would like to see if we could see through our own blinds on both directions, or maybe I'm just weird and I'm the only guy that did that as a kid. But if you were to go up to your blinds, the old Venetian ones with a little hole in the center, and push your eye up against it, you would be able to see through that hole. Well, technically speaking, you could probably get a camera to see through that. However, a private investigator cannot do that. Why? Because the individual has lowered and closed the blinds, thereby creating a reasonable expectation of privacy. However, if that same individual opens up the blinds, whether it be just simply turning them open or raising them, and you can see fully inside with a naked eye from a vehicle or from the street, then yes, you can film, in Texas anyway, through that open window without any question, because they have opened those blinds and they have given away essentially or removed their reasonable expectation of privacy. It's kind of like parking somewhere and being able to see over a 4-foot chain link fence or even a 4-foot wooden fence. If the fence is 4 feet tall, clearly the only people you're going to have any privacy from are toddlers. You have no real expectation of privacy, and therefore anything that you do inside of that yard can be filmed. However, if you have, some say 6 feet, I think that's a little more questionable. If you have an 8 to 10 foot high fence, there is no question that you have set up a reasonable expectation of privacy and that you are attempting to maintain your privacy. And a private investigator cannot circumvent that even by putting his camera on a stick or monopod and raising it over the fence. You do not get to circumvent that. Now, if the natural topography allows you to park someplace where you are higher than that person's property line, that becomes more of a gray area. On one hand, yes, you did circumvent their reasonable expectation of privacy. On the other hand, the natural topography of the area and where the road or street was located is actually what enabled you to do so. So, technically, a homeowner or renter should have known that that could happen. You're probably going to get away with that one. Trespassing. There is no good excuse to trespass on private property. If it is trespassing, you cannot film it. If you can film it without trespassing, you can. If you cannot, you cannot. No ands, ifs, or buts about it, or as somebody likes to correct me, ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just the way that it is. You can't sneak on somebody else's property in order to obtain information. You can go on somebody's property to serve lawful service of process unless they have it properly posted for no trespassing or marked in certain rural areas. But you're there for a specific legal purpose. Camping out on the property or hanging out on the property, loitering on the property is not allowed. You can't sneak into somebody's property, hide out in the bushes with a ghillie suit on, and film their activities. You just cannot legally do it. It is trespassing, and it will cause all of your information and your evidence to be thrown out of court. Now, if there's a public land that you can access and you can see on that private property from that public land, yes, you can do that. But you better make sure that it is public land. Also, we need to cover some stalking laws. In my time, I have had clients that have admitted to performing their own surveillance for a variety of reasons. They want to see what's going on. They want to make sure that the person in question lives there still. And it's when you say person in question lives there still, a lot of times that has to do with service of process, and they know they need somebody else to serve it. But they still think that they're not stalking because they have no ill intent. Well, unfortunately, there's a big difference between what is listed specifically in a statute and what case law covers, and anyone with any real experience in the legal field knows that you have to compare the two. And in Texas, you can go from harassment to stalking very quickly. You have to have certain legal purposes for being in the area. If you're there to visit a friend and somebody from your past happens to live there, that's fine. However, if you're parked on the street watching somebody's house and you are not a licensed private investigator or a law enforcement officer, chances are you're stalking. The only other exception would be a parent waiting for his or her child or a process server waiting for somebody to serve. No, you do not get to sit outside and watch for somebody's house and then call your process server or private investigator and say, they're here now. That is stalking. GPS units. GPS units are a very tricky situation. Technically, in the state of Texas, you can put a GPS unit on your own vehicle. If somebody else is operating a vehicle that you legally own, or your name is at least one of the names on the title, legally speaking, you can place a GPS unit on that vehicle. You can also authorize it. However, there are those that will point out that there are federal laws in place that might make that illegal. And if your name is or not on the title for that vehicle in any shape, form, or fashion, you cannot put a GPS unit on there and you cannot authorize it. It is a Class A misdemeanor, unlawful wiretapping. It is not worth it. Plus, GPS units, honestly, they tell you where somebody is, but generally by the time you get to wherever they are, whatever they were doing was already done. Believe me, I would know. I've worked cases where we've actually had the authorization to place a GPS unit on a vehicle and have lawfully done so, and every single solitary time. The only thing that GPS unit has been good for is to aid an investigator in reestablishing contact with a subject or claimant, well, not really claimant, subject, after losing them in traffic. You do it with the subject and expect to show up wherever they are and document whatever they're doing. Every single solitary time we've used a GPS, whatever activity they've been doing has been wrapped up by the time an investigator got back on scene, and they were just leaving, in fact. In fact, at one point, the closest we got is an investigator showed up, saw the subject doing an, we'll just say, inappropriate act, got the camera ready, started to film, and as the camera finally turned on and got it to where the investigator could hit the record button, the subject stopped the activity. It was absolutely useless. So, with that, I'm going to go on ahead and wrap this one up. If you like what you hear, if you have any questions, feel free to comment or send us an email. And of course, please hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, take care. And if you have an issue at hand, you can email us at dave@preferredintelligence.com or give us a call at 214-785-4504.